Sadly, we couldn't make it out of February without a couple of injuries. First, it was George Valera. Now it's Trevor Stephan. The bullpen's got a couple of injuries that they've got to work through. We've got to figure out who's going to fill those short-term roles. And if Tyler Freeman can handle center field, how does that affect the makeup of the Guardians roster? On today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I am Jeff. Over there is Justin. We are going to talk about Travis. I'm kidding.
We are. Bazana Cast.
Bazana Cast. It's a little sad. I mean, listen, I've been on Bazana from the beginning, but it hurts that we're losing. Is anyone out there a lawyer? Can we somehow trademark Merry Kurtzmas? I feel like that is something that we need to trademark and then sell to whatever team drafts him.
Do I have to give up my Nick Kurtz body pillow?
No, that was a gift. You can.
Okay, I need to keep that. Keep that.
We have some interesting news and going ons to talk about. It's going to be. I do want to give a shout out to our everydayer Alton, who's helped us out in the past. He let me know that it was Jose took off in left field and not third. But
that's right. Yeah,
that's
while Juan Uribe was still here.
Yes, and that. But I had reminded him about that Gomes collision that affected it. So, hey, that was
way over my head.
We have some ups and some downs. It's okay. Tomorrow's show will be way over my head. Letting you know, tomorrow we're gonna do a. People really liked our hitter prospect draft. We're gonna make an ultimate prospect. Tomorrow is the pitcher's tool draft, and listen, I feel braggy saying this. I often have an edge on Justin when it comes to the draft. I don't know why. I don't know. It's like it feels braggy to say I have an edge in anything, but Justin definitely has an edge. So if you're not a fan of mine, tune in tomorrow to hear me get spanked because that's going to happen.
People did vote my way on the position player tools draft, so. We'll do the pitcher one. Yeah, we'll do the pitcher one, and then we'll do the one for the prospect team. That was the one people really liked last year. So
yeah, the prospect team. I gotta sit down and game plan how I can intentionally hose you as much as possible. That was the go a year ago.
I mean, spoiler alert: anybody who takes Ralphie pretty much has the edge. That's whoever has the first pick. We did not. We haven't drafted yet. We haven't done our random number generator for the pitcher one. We'll do that when we record that. But
yep.
Well, today's show is a news bulletin, basically. And if you hadn't heard before, Trevor Stephan shut down for 3 weeks with a deep bone bruise in his throwing elbow. It was from just intense throwing. The good news is there's no structural damage, so he's just not going to throw for 3 weeks. They're going to reevaluate him then. I would say pretty confidently, today is the 28th as we're recording this. That puts him at reevaluating the 20th. Games start the 28th. So even if they said on the 21st, hey, you can start throwing again, there's just no way he's going to be ready to throw on opening day. So I would say he is going to start the season on the injured list. And I would say the same probably for James Karinchak, who is on day 15 of a no throwing thing. He's working on a weighted ball, and he had a strength test last Saturday, and they gave him a cortisone shot to address bursitis in his shoulder. So that's 2 spots right there for sure that are not going to be taken when it comes to opening day. And Cleveland was already talking about how they were going to fill out that last spot, whether it was Ben Lively, Carlos Carrasco, Xavier Curry, that last spot in the bullpen was up for
right. He's got the he's the only one with an opt out, right? If he doesn't make the team, gone.
Yes. So the thing we got to figure out here is, so essentially you kind of have 3 roster spots up for grabs, right? You've got Clase, Barlow, Henches, Sandlin, and Morgan. Those are 5 spots we know are pretty much locked down. The final 3 with Stephan, Karinchak, and whoever's going to win that long man job are essentially up for grabs now. So who do we think is going to fill those spots? Obviously, we hope 2 of them are temporary. I think it's kind of interesting that they haven't guaranteed Curry a job out of spring training. And I kind of understand why, because if he goes back to AAA and becomes a starter, he gives you much needed depth because AAA is rough right now. But at the same time, he saved them a lot last year in the bullpen. He did a great job for them, and he can play the long man role. Maybe he wins that job, but for how much he was part of the team last year and how well he pitched, I'm kind of surprised like he doesn't have a job out of camp. That's a little weird, but also a great guy. Posed for a wedding photo with me and my wife on our wedding day when we were downtown. So
very sweet of
personal
him.
bias.
I think the first thing you said is the truth of it. He was essentially their sixth starter a year ago and held up well in that role. And I think if we're being honest, they don't have great options. It's like Cantillo and
Gaddis.
Yeah, and that's where you go. And I think the same way like Lively is the insurance. I think like if things go sideways and someone gets hurt, the long-term replacement is more than likely Xavier Curry. So I feel like there's a decent chance that like Curry and Lively and guys that can start the year in AAA will. Like that's also, I think it's like Carrasco can start the year in AAA. I think like someone like Beatty might have I mean, he didn't get knocked out. So, there's that side of it. So, but it's like, I think if Beatty pitches well, he's almost guaranteed because otherwise he's gone. I think, I don't know. Be curious to see. It's a new group in charge, but it's like there was always it sounds so weird to say because we've always talked about how Tito didn't necessarily love to go to rookies. Tito loved arms though, and he loved arms he wasn't super familiar with. Like a year ago, I would say Cade Smith is locked to make it. It's just kind of a fresh arm that he's going to be like, wow, look what he's doing. Because Cade Smith's got some intriguing stuff. But then there's also just Heron is another lefty and the valuableness of that. So I don't know. Right now, my guess, if I was to put money on it, would be Heron, probably Beatty, and then I would bet on Ben Lively. He's going to be their up and down guy this year, and I think he's the long guy right now.
Yeah, the hard part is the 40-man roster situation, I think, is because it doesn't sound like the injury to Stephan is long enough to warrant a 60-day IL stint, so you can't create a spot there. I don't think it's the case on Karinchak either. You can see, maybe, but it doesn't sound like it is. So you're not really clearing spots with those guys in the 40. They are obviously not going to use a 60-day spot on Espino. I don't think. They haven't done it yet. So you would think if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now.
Yeah.
And we both guessed earlier before spring training, they weren't going to do it. So I think the 40-man roster situation has a big impact here on who
at
makes
some
that
point
bullpen.
We need to do, I'm going to say it right here. We need to sit down and say, who are the bottom 5 spots in that roster? Like, who are the guys? Who are the ones we think are those last 5 spots who could potentially come off? Not saying we got to do it today. I'm just saying that is one of those things we should definitely sit down and discuss.
I mean, I wouldn't rule out a spring training trade of somebody who's on the end of that roster just to clear a spot, whether, it's offering, De Los Santos back, or if it's Florida doesn't make the club. I don't know. We'll have to do that at some point.
I'm going to award one of the many infielders.
If they can swing a trade, but maybe one of those infielders is going to play outfield. We're going to talk about that later in the show.
Infielders.
Yeah. I just think 40-man status makes a difference here. Because like you said, Lively is on the 40. I feel like he might be one of the bottom 5 guys on the 40. So like if you really wanted,
didn't they give him like $1 million though? Just because of his flexibility?
Like 700,000, I think. But yeah, I mean, he could be an up and down arm. You like that with a guy like Ben Lively, who could be an up and down guy for cheap. Yeah. So it might be kind of hard to clear his spot because you're going to want that depth. But if you really want Beatty, like if you want Beatty to start the year on the 40-man in the bullpen, you got to find a spot there. If they decide Carrasco is worth it, they have to do that. But I don't know. I wouldn't count out one of Heron. I think for sure one of Heron, Cade, and Curry is going to make it. I think one of those 3 for sure makes it. Possibly a second 2 of those 3, and then it's between Lively, Beatty, and Carrasco. I know. I saw some people on Twitter talking about, Franco Alemán. Look, I
he hasn't thrown 2 days in a row in his career.
No, that's the thing people got to remember too. I really want to caution people. Franco Alemán is a great prospect. Don't get me wrong. His stuff is nasty. He throws 99. The slider's looking really good. The control got better last year. People were missing like crazy. But yeah, the the Guardians director of player development last year, like on the record, said like, you know, we're pleased with his regiment in the weight room, his commitment to go in there, but we want him to work on his availability. Like that, for them to say that on the record, I think we've said this before, for them to say that on the record during an interview, to actually say that and admit that they want him to be more available to pitch. Like he was going 6 days between relief outings. Like he wasn't a starter. So he's got to work on that. They definitely like him. They definitely noticed, but he's got to work on that. And then, you know, I don't think we're quite ready for Andrew Walters. That's probably July, August thing, I'm guessing, with him, if it gets to that point, if things go well. I
don't know. I'll say this, like, we've already had guys like, was it Chase Meredith a year ago, or Chase Silseth is the one. It's like, don't put anything past Walters. I'm just going to put it that way. By all reports, like, I mean, you drafted him because
the Angels.
No, it's the Angels. Thank God they're not the Angels. Oh my goodness, I can't. There's enough stuff I couldn't deal with. This team was the Angels. I wouldn't be the host anymore.
Velasquez, opening day catcher.
This wouldn't be a ginger beer. Let's put it that way. Having on the show, this is Locked On Angels.
Doesn't drink.
Yeah, a teetotaler. But if I had to do 1,200 episodes talking about the Angels, no one can stand that. That's why we're on like host 17 of Locked On Angels. But we love the dudes over there. They are really good, nice guys. And one of my best friends in the industry was Taylor, who started it. So enough of ripping on the Angels. You know, it's just a situation now. I do think Walters, though, I thought he should be the first guy up from the class. He obviously wasn't with what happened with Chanel, but
the Angels, shocking.
But I Walters is really impressive. We got to take a break. We can come back and discuss. You know, the most exciting part about baseball, long relief. In a second.
Yes, everyone's favorite topic. Yes, and how good this bullpen was. I got one more thing on the bullpen before we move on to the Guardians' offensive approach. Unfortunately, you won't be buying a ticket to see Trevor Stephan pitch anytime soon. Maybe sometime in the month of May. But if you want to get to a game before then, the Guardians game, maybe you want to go to a Cavs game after that exciting walk-off shot the other night, you can do so last minute and take the frustration out of ticket buying and the planning using Game Time. It's exactly what they're good for. I did plan in advance. I bought my wife and I Cavs ticket to get the Kelsey Brothers bobblehead next week when we get back from spring training. And planning ahead was good there too. So maybe you don't want to plan ahead. Maybe you do. They have last minute ticket deals. It's really good. You can see exactly where your seat is when you buy it with the app. And they also have the Game Time guarantee, which means if you find the same ticket in the same section and row for less, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference, and no weird final price. It's all in upfront pricing. So if you buy a ticket for $40, you're going to know exactly what you're paying when you get to checkout. It's not going to be a surprise with all those fees. Can't stand that in other apps, but Game Time doesn't do that to you. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your very first purchase. Times apply. But create that account and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off your very first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Just want to say too, with the injury to Stephan to start the year, and Karinchak being Karinchak, the Scott Barlow trade looking a lot more important all of a sudden.
And again, I'll say, no one's going poor trying to fix Kansas City Royals pitchers. That's, and I thought, again, Zach we didn't get into that as much as we maybe should have, and we'll talk about some more, but I believe it was Zach had some great stuff, one of his on what's been done to make Barlow even more dangerous. But that looks like a smart deal.
Yeah, he was tweaking the grip on his slider, and it started with working with Ruben Niebla in San Diego last year. Shocking that an ex-Guardians pitching coach would find the way to make him better, and he'll come to Cleveland and probably get even better, and he'll make himself a ton of money this offseason for the Royals. The Royals will re-sign him for a ton of money now that somebody else went out and developed him for them. That's what the Royals will do after they sign a bunch of mediocre pitchers this offseason. They pay for him after the fact. Zach had another good article this week in The Athletic, too, talking about the Guardians trying to tweak their offensive approach. We didn't get to it when it came out, but essentially talking to some of the players and hitting coach Chris Valaika, being comfortable with swinging and missing more because you're taking more risks at, more impactful, more intense swings The best way to improve some of these guys are who they are. Like, you can't change certain players. Like, Stephen Kwan's not going to be a 20 home run hitter based on any kind of changes he makes.
No.
Like, he would have to start taking steroids. So,
I'm kidding. I'm just I'm being a jerk.
You heard it here first.
No, I'm being a jerk. There is nothing like that. If by steroids you mean chest, then yes, he is always on the chest
steroids.
Yeah,
short
I don't even know what that is.
I would need steroids to play chess because I couldn't beat anybody. I couldn't even beat the most novice person.
I went 0-8 the 1 year I tried out for the chess team. It was not a good experience. I was not good.
I would not even try out, so you got further than I did at least. Short of drafting guys with big power, bringing guys in with big power. Look, this whole experiment of picking pitchers to drive and trying to get into counts and taking more intentful swings is good in theory. It's great to talk about, great to practice, but it's got to bear some fruit for it to work. I will say, like I said, short of bringing in guys who can hit for power, drafting them who have power track records, this is at least a good idea, a good approach to take. I would applaud the creativity, the adaptability to change what you did last year, obviously realizing it didn't work. And if you can find a way to add some power to some of these guys, I'm not saying Miles Straw is going to hit 3 home runs, even 2, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Last year didn't work. So I will give them credit for trying something new. We'll see if it works. It's got to bear fruit. And if it doesn't work, then something's got to change. But I'll clap my hands for at least the change in approach and adaptability.
I'm just glad that we're not trying to turn everyone into a cookie cutter, exact same type of hitter, that they're open to different types. Like, right, they like all swing types now. They're just not all about the lean, mean contact machines. They're looking at more of a big, beautiful swing and seeing if they can generate some power, and they're going for anything possible. And that's great, because on a very basic level, it felt like, yeah, they traded Benson and Jones because they had trade value, and Oscar Gonzalez didn't, because everyone knew Oscar Gonzalez was going to turn into a pumpkin again. But at the same time, those type of guys were also, out of vogue with this team. So that's part of the reason they moved on. Like, oh, we're going for contact. These are not contact hitters. These are more 3 outcome hitters. Yeah, 3 outcome hitters. So it's nice to see them realizing, like, it's, you need different types. It was the old thing, like in the NFL, you need to build a wide receiving core like it's an NBA lineup. You need 5 different types. It's like your lineup needs to have a balance in types of hitters. And hey, if Devison doesn't work, it cost him $40,000. To you and me, that's a lot. To them, that's nothing. Giving a chance to Florial. I mean, right now with all the pitcher injuries, maybe we miss Cody Morris a little bit, but
until he gets hurt.
Until he gets hurt again, which has been his problem. But Florial is a chance for that as well. I give them credit for realizing that they got a bit lucky when they made the postseason. And listen, everyone else was bad. They made the postseason. Maybe advancing is where they got lucky. Making it, they weren't lucky. But realizing that they took the wrong lesson from that year.
They did not want to rely. They realized they can't rely on the BABIP gods to be kind to them 99 to 100 times a year. Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, just kind of going with that approach, like sitting there saying, like, not saying you to be down in the count 0-2 and try to take a hack for, the Jim Thome statue in center field. Like, that's not a good way to play things. But, talking about, like, if you're up 2-0 and you think you're going to get a fastball, take a rip. And if you swing and miss, that's okay. And Stephen Kwan had a great quote in there in Zach's article, just saying, like, if I'm up 2-0 and I take a swing and miss at a big fastball, and it's better for me to be up 2-1 in the count rather than, ground out to second base in a 2-0 count just because I didn't swing hard enough and I could have done more damage. Like, it's the adage to fight another day. I will say it's interesting too, is it kind of felt like, I don't know if it's like an old wives' tale or how you want to say it, but like players always grew into power too, right? Like, I remember when Asdrubal Cabrera became a power hitting shortstop, and he gave the credit to Orlando Cabrera, who convinced him to swing harder and pick pitches
that.
to drive.
Like
the
that was Uribe before Wani Uribe story was Orlando Cabrera.
Yeah, like those things kind of happened organically. Like Michael Brantley learned to do that too. Like you just, as you grow as a hitter, and if you're really good, obviously, like, you know, Michael Cabrera was a pretty good hitter. Michael Brantley was an elite hitter. You learn to take advantage in certain counts. You get a little more strength, and you learn the game. You learn how pitchers are going to pitch you, and that develops organically. Like, again, Cabrera gave him the advice to be able to do that and tell him he has the power to do it, and he should, and it worked for him. But it's just like, that's kind of what it feels like Valleca's trying to teach here, is that, you know, you can pick certain pitches to drive. It's okay. I think it's interesting none of the hitters like already had that taught to them, or it's got to be retaught, or I don't know how you say that, but like, again, it just felt like an organic thing that happened to Asdrubal Cabrera, and I thought that was natural for a lot of guys sometimes. But maybe that's part of not having the veteran leadership, and
it doesn't work for everyone. You know, like and I also don't want to, you know, people to think like all of a sudden. Listen, I think it's always going to be hard for Quan to be a double-digit guy. I think even though Tyler Freeman hits big-time exit velocities, I don't know if he's ever going to necessarily be a guy who's going to get more than 12 or so. Like there are certain swing path issues with guys that, unless you're going to change their swing, you can kind of see. You know, Stephen Kwan, I believe, had the lowest hard hit percentage in baseball a year ago and the year before that. Like that's, I appreciate a change as long as we're not changing just for the sake of changing. That's the one thing I'll say with some of the talk about some of these players and changing approaches. Like, you know, like Quan had regression because the BABIP gods were unkind. Should he?
Not because he hit the ball hard.
He didn't hit. No, he didn't hit
part of it.
I mean, but he didn't hit the ball hard the year before. Like, why did he go from a 115 to a 100? It wasn't because of a drop in hard hit percentage. It was because his BABIP dropped, 45 points. And
hit the ball harder, sustain that better.
But is that swing in a pro? And like I said, but the one thing we've kind of learned through the years, and so last 2 years, he's literally had the lowest hard hit and the lowest barrel percentage of baseball. He doesn't barrel and he doesn't hit the ball hard. And that's why you're going to be lucky to get power. But the old adage, and having talked to coaches through the years, is like swing changes are exceptionally hard to do. They rarely work. It is often a last resort. Teams will not draft guys who need a swing change because they think even with 3-4 years in the minors, you're not going to be able to do it. So again, people are like, hey, you're just praising them. Like, I'm praising them for going out and getting guys with different swing changes and approaches. I think expecting someone in the major league level to change it is insanity. Just because, again, like I said, I have sat there back in the day and talked to teams. It's like, we're not going to take him. He requires a swing change. And teams not willing to draft a high school or college player because it's too hard to do. So expecting a guy already in the majors to make a massive change. Quan is extremely effective with what he does. He shouldn't try to be what he's not. When guys try to be what they're not, that often gets ugly.
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't think it's a swing change. I think it's more approaches are hard to change too. I think it's more of a mindset than anything. The mindset would be easier to change.
Grady Sizemore is the one guy that comes to mind as someone who I felt like did that. But I don't have too many other examples, but it felt like he was that guy who kind of did work on that in the big leagues, but he was just special in every possible way. So,
yeah. Speaking of changes, Tyler Freeman played center field in a spring training game. We'll talk about that. And if that can change if that can change the composition of the Guardians roster, all coming up.
Sorry, everyone. Our fantastic sponsor is, of course, our good friends over at FanDuel. We love to talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get your buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet all of your favorite NBA players and teams. Bet live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I was just reminded by one of our everydayers, Landon Frame. He DM'd me. The last time we talked was him sending me FanDuel odds and who'd be the first overall pick last year. Again, I'm telling you, if you want good up to the minute information, that's the place to go. Make sure you're checking out FanDuel to see who the Guardians are going to draft 1-1. But for now, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Major League Baseball and the NBA.
So Tyler Freeman, not very long after his debut in center field this spring, had a fly ball hit to him. It actually didn't do too bad. He went back on it, made a pretty decent catch. Arizona's a hard place to play in the day, and the sun, the wind, how the ball carries out there, it can be tough, especially when it's your first day out there. But I thought he looked okay, and I'm kind of curious to see if there is a outcome of this roster where he makes it and he can give you some versatility in the outfield. Like him going to the outfield, at least playing out there, to me says that Cleveland is probably more invested in Rocchio and Arias at shortstop. I mean, Arias has played right field before, so I think we know he can kind of do that if you want him to. Doesn't sound like that was his preference when it happened, but he's okay at it. And it's an option for him and them if they need to do it. Obviously, they haven't asked Rocchio to change positions. He is all over the infield, but it kind of feels like they're all in on those two options at shortstop. And then, if whatever happens, they move Jimenez to short. That's another conversation, obviously. But I don't know, like, how does that allow you to put the roster together? If you say Freeman's going to play center field, that obviously impacts Miles Straw because obviously they're not guaranteeing him anything.
He's guaranteed a roster spot because they're paying him. That's about it.
Yes, I'm just saying it doesn't guarantee him playing time, which is good because you shouldn't guarantee him playing time based on his salary, which they often did in the past. They did it last year. But it impacts him. It impacts De Los Santos. It impacts Florial. Florial, by the way, if you're just looking at roster resource, which isn't, it's a nice tool, but it's not always accurate. But if you are looking at that, this is probably why, the only lefty they have on the bench projected is Florial. And that might be because they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties in the lineup already. So that could be why it's all righties in the bench. I mean, okay, Austin Hedges is guaranteed a spot. I don't know. Are you doing this in case De Los Santos doesn't make it? Like, to give yourself an extra outfielder to go with Florial? You've already got Laureano, who's guaranteed a certain amount of playing time. Like, I'm just very curious to see how this roster composition fits because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 outfielders, 5 outfielders if you include Will Brennan for 2 spots. Like that's kind of wild. And I don't expect Freeman to play. I mean, I guess it makes sense for Freeman to have the ability to be on the roster and back up both infield spots and play the outfield. But Gabby Arias can do that too. One of these guys is going to AAA, right? Like Rocchio, Freeman, or Arias. Not all 3 are making the roster, right?
Do they all have options? Like,
yes, they all have options. This is the last option here for all 3.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, for Tyler Freeman, this is a smart transition, something they should have tried before. It's one of those things that's like, why hasn't he even tried more in the outfield just to get him some reps? He's always been a pretty quick adjuster. He's a solid athlete. The other thing is, hey, if he can adapt to center field, do you know what that tells me? There'll be no problems for Travis Bazzana once Cleveland drafts him 1-1, so they can have him up middle of next year. But I like how you think. At the same time, like, yeah, have Freeman play all over. There's value in that bat. It is kind of a one-note bat, but I think, he is a good bench player or a third division starter. And I think just finding ways to get these guys out there and get them reps is important. Like, we'd rather, that's what I talked about last year. I know Colt Calhoun was a great veteran presence, and I know Austin Hedges is here to be a great veteran presence, but I'm hoping that Hedges is glued to the bench most of the time. And you want to see what a Freeman can do. You have to give these guys reps so you get an opportunity to see what you got. And, it's overdue. This is another nice recent change.
I wonder if he goes back to AAA this year, if he'll continue to get reps in the outfield. I'll be curious to see if that happens. Yeah, to at least give yourself that option if they don't feel like his future is at shortstop. And who knows, maybe that also boosts his trade value and they can use him in a trade. I feel like that's been something we talked about for a long time as well. And maybe they have, but, because AAA, you're going to have Ray Delgado probably and Jose Tena. And I guess Daniel Steeman's still here, and you're going to have Angel Martinez and Juan Brito is going to be here. And I think Bracho is still here and he's going to go to AAA. Like, you got a lot of infield options. So it makes sense to get Freeman some time in the outfield, even AAA, if he doesn't make the team. Because as we know, the open day roster is not the roster you end the season with. Hopefully they can make some changes. I just don't know how this bench is going to work out. Like I said, you've got Quan locked into left for all the at-bats. You've got Straw, Laureano, Brennan, Florial, maybe De Los
I don't think
Santos.
Brennan's a guarantee. I think he is far from a guarantee.
No.
They've got so many lefties, and they have to keep Florial. So to me, I think at the start of the year, it's like, I think your outfield, if I look at Straw and Quan, is easy. Florial, Laureano, those four are where you start. And then I know Devison looked terrible today, but he's going to be kind of in that rotation if they want to keep him. So I think, like, there isn't actually a space for Brennan. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I think he's going to have to kind of reprove himself to some degree this year, just because there's so many lefties. And hey, when George Valera is finally healthy and healthy forever, then that's another lefty you got to sort through. Or he'll just never be healthy. So
yeah, and then there's Noel, who we don't really believe in at this point.
He's not an outfielder.
No, he's not an outfielder. And Rodriguez is still there. Maybe he'll get a chance as well. I'm not ready to give up on Will Brennan. I will say that right now.
I'm not giving up. I just think it's a hard situation for him.
It is. I'm not ready to, I don't want to say I was the only one on the Will Brennan bandwagon, but I was definitely, champion, thinking he could be at least a platoon right fielder and impact. I still think he can be an impact hitter. He's a great defender. He's got a great arm. He runs well. I like the kid a lot. I still think he can do it. I mean, there might be platoon issues. He might not walk as much as I thought.
You and Hiram were the biggest ones on him, as I recall. That's your buddy grouping there.
Where have I gone wrong? Oh, next thing you know, I'll be asking for Yu Chang to come back and take over the shortstop job that nobody seems to want to claim. Yikes. Well, I don't know. We got a lot of spring left to decide the outfield thing. I think we'll probably have to, as the spring goes on, we'll have to maybe do a check-in in terms of our roster and our confidence level of who's going to start the year in the outfield. But we also got to figure out who's going to end the year in the outfield too, because like I just said, whoever starts the year on your 40-man or 26-man roster is not guaranteed at the end. Friday show, we'll do the pitcher tools draft. So Jeff and I, as he talked about at the top of the show, we'll draft the best individual fastball, curveball, changeup, command, all that good stuff. We'll see who can build the best pitcher from the Guardian system through a draft. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll continue to do our position previews. The guys didn't really listen a lot on the catcher one. We'll try to make them better. Just something we always do. Though.
I'm going Rodney Boone's fastball. I'm telling you now.
I already got my curveball pick locked in. I'll say that. At some point, we'll do a mock draft. We talked about that. Jeff might do that on his own. I might be here with him to do it. We'll see. I'm headed to spring training on Thursday. We got our annual Guardians prospect draft we're going to do. People did like that last year, so we'll do that. And then I thought, with all the talk of expansion in a couple of years, we want to do a yearly expansion protection and see how the roster changes and who we protect in an expansion draft. So all that stuff coming up the rest of this spring.
Yep. Remember to comment, like, all that fun. Subscribe on a friend, coworker's computer. Get those subscription numbers up. Thank you for joining us, and go Guardians, go.